Hi friends, welcome to the Plain Fun RC channel. I'm your host, Saul. We are continuing here with our canard stick build, and we are moving on to the fuselage. And as you can see, we've got our plans laid out. Pardon the dark sections over here. You have to remember these plans were drawn back in 1985, and this kit had not been opened, I think, not been opened since it was first made. So obviously there's some darkening in the plans as time is moving on. Anyway, we're going to be starting that up. It's going to be a pretty straightforward build. You can see it's just a stick-style construction. That's what makes these canard sticks or the ugly sticks wonderful to build because of their sheer simplicity. All right, more to come. All right, friends, we continue our update here with regards to the building of the fuselage for the Croix Models Canard Stick. Let's talk about some of the firewall F1, the firewall, excuse me, and F1 here. So whenever you're building any airplane, it's a good idea to always take the time to pre-drill for your motor. It's much easier to go through and drill than when the actual former is attached to the fuselage. So no matter whether you're building a stick-style aircraft or something a little larger like a giant scale, if you can pre-drill before you start mounting the formers, go ahead and do it. The same holds true here for the nose gear. Pre-drill it so that way it makes it a lot easier when you go to attach it. And plus, with this particular model, the nose gear will be hidden, as you can see here on the plans. You can see that the nose gear is behind F1, and this portion here where the bolts are and the blind nuts, which is what those are right there, they are hidden because of this portion up front that will be sheeted. So you want to go ahead and make sure you have everything drilled and ready to go. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update with the Croix Models Canard, we're working on the fuselage. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and we have butt glued these two pieces together. We've taken our 1/16 fuselage doubler and gone ahead and put it over this end here. And now we've marked off the spots here and here for our formers. Now, the reason why you see the doubler back here is if you look at the plans, you'll see a lot of the force being generated on the plane is back here. We've got our wing, which is sitting back here. We've got our landing gear, which is here. We've got our engine. So there's a lot of force coming from all directions. So this is why you're going to double up on something like this right here. All right, so now we're going to go ahead. We're going to start putting our formers in place, and then gradually we'll start bringing our fuselage halves together. More to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, let's talk about what we're seeing. We've got our balsa tripler here, and the balsa tripler is used to be used as reinforcement here in the wing saddle. And the way to get proper placement is we take our F4, which is the firewall that's used to mount the motor, and keep in mind this is the top of the fuselage up here. We're going to place this here like so, and we're going to take our tripler, and we're actually going to butt it right up against F4, like so. So that the edge right here sits flush with this with F4. And then once we have that in place, we're also going to make sure that it sits nice and flush here on the bottom where the saddle sits, and then we'll go ahead and we'll glue that in place. It's important, very important, that we get a nice flush fit here on the bottom because this is where the wing's going to sit, and we don't want to do anything that's going to cause any distortion of where the wing is sitting. All right, we're double checking our fit. It looks good. Let's get this out of the way so we don't accidentally glue it in place. A little bit of thin CA will do the trick. And there we go. And that's it. So I'll go ahead, I'll finish gluing this, and we'll repeat the same process for the other fuselage half. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, I forgot to include some quick video of the instructions for the fuselage. So I just want you to know that that's there. There's steps 1 and 2. And feel free to pause your video. And let me go ahead and flip the instructions over to the remaining instructions that are here for the fuselage. I know this may not be an exciting part of the video, but you know, finding the it can be easier to find the plans for a lot of airplanes that are no longer made than it is to find the actual instructions. Anyway, let's talk about what we have going on here right now in terms of where we are at this time. So, with regards to the construction of the fuselage, you can see here we've added quite a bit. We've got our triangular stock. We have our 1/4-inch spruce. We have also our 1/4-inch bottom stringers down here. So we've added quite a bit to it. Now let's talk incidents, canard incidents. So we're looking at the side view of the fuselage. Here's our canard, and you can see here it's a positive 2-degree incidence. Whenever you're building any type of canard aircraft, you're going to need positive incidence in the canard. So I've seen anywhere from 1.5 to 2 degrees. Now you may say, well, that's not a lot, but trust me, most canards have a lot of surface area, so you don't need a great deal, but you gotta have positive incidence. So what they've done here, they have these die-cut pieces, and this die-cut piece is going to fit right in here like so, and we're going to leave a 1/4-inch space here in the front for our F1 former. But if you look carefully, notice the angle right here. It's a positive angle. And the way I know that is because if we take this piece and we're going to put it here on the plans, like so. So it sits flush with the canard. Here's the canard right here. And you can see when we line it up with the edge of F1, notice the built-in positive incidence. And that's really helpful because we won't need to use an incidence meter, which is available from places like robart.com, robart, R-O-B-A-R-T.com. Anyway, we're going to drop this in, get this in place, and then what we'll do is we'll trim away this excess portion of the fuselage so we have a positive incidence built into the fuselage side. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update, we're looking at the fuselage. We've got our formers in place on the right side. And the important thing to remember when you're going through and you're putting your formers in, keep them at 90 degrees. Now, what I like to do is, this is the wonderful X-Acto miter box, but not only does it work well in terms of cutting wood at 45-degree angles, but because of the 90-degree sides here, as you can see, you can take it and place it like so, and you can see how it gives a perfect 90-degree angle. And that's really helpful. I've used that a lot of different times for a lot of different occasions where I needed 90 degrees. Not only that way, but you can also stand it up as well, and you can see we get a perfect 90 degree as well. Anyway, its narrowness, because it's narrow, the narrow nature of this particular miter box allows you to be able to go ahead and get the rest of the formers at 90 degrees as well, and it fits very nicely on the fuselage. So we've got those in place, as we can see. Let's go ahead and we're going to put the left side on, get that glued in, and then just keep on keeping on. All right, folks, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, we have our fuselage half down here, our left fuselage half, and we're going to go ahead and take our right fuselage half and put that on there. Now, because we've gone ahead and we have taken our formers, and as I mentioned just a second ago, we've got them at 90 degrees, this should be pretty straightforward. One of the nice things about the stick-style aircraft is that it's a straight fuselage. I mean, there's no curvatures like, say, a scale type of aircraft that you might be building. So this makes putting the fuselage halves together much easier. The key thing is just getting them lined up with the lines that were drawn previously, as you can see here, okay? Some of the lines that were drawn. They usually should line up fairly simple. So what we'll do is we'll take our fuselage half, once again, make sure that you have the correct sides, make sure it's notice how we have the wing saddle here, okay? And we want to go through and make sure that we have the wing saddle here on this part, as you can see. That's very important because you don't want to accidentally glue one right side up and glue the other upside down. So let's go ahead and get this in place. Now, what I recommend is have some thick and thin CA handy. when you're doing the gluing exercise. Take a moment to test fit everything first to make sure everything is fitting correctly. And once again, make sure your formers line up with the lines that you drew previously on the other fuselage. Now, you do want to start at one end. Don't try to do them all at once. Start with one former at a time. So we're going to start with this former over here, just so you know. Once again, we're going to double check to make sure everything is at 90 degrees, which you can see it is, as indicated here, looking at the side of the actual miter box in relation to the fuselage. And also make sure that the former lines up here, lines up here with the top of the other half of the fuselage that you're going to be gluing it to. We've got this lined up very nicely, just perfect. We'll use our miter box here just to double check to make sure it's lined up just right. We're looking great. I think at this point what we can do is go ahead and use some thin CA to hold this in place. Or to glue this in place, that is. Okay. Looks great. We're just always better to take two to review. And what I mean by that is take 2 seconds to review your work to make sure everything is sitting correctly. Because it takes far less effort to review it than to redo it. Meaning it takes far less effort to fix the problem if you do it right the first time. Or the old adage is measure twice, cut once, if you will. All right, we're going to put some force on this. Make sure everything is back a little bit. Here we go. All right. And here we go. Some folks may think that CA is not that strong. I completely disagree. It is a wonderful glue because it's extremely lightweight, dries fast, and it adheres very, very well. Now, if you're unsure whether to use thick, thin, or medium, it just depends if you need more time to glue a part. That's really what it comes down to, more than anything. All right, let's move on to our next former, which is F3. Once again, we're going to take a moment to double check our fit, make sure everything is lined up with the lines, and sitting where it should be. In this case, we have the triangular stock here you can see that I'm pointing at right now, and we want to make sure this top edge here lines up with the triangular stock. And it does. There we go. Okay. And very important to make sure the former sits nice and flush up against the surface, especially when you're butting it up against a piece of triangular stock. You don't want to accidentally make the mistake of moving the former too high up on the other fuselage half, and then all of a sudden you'll find the former is not in direct contact with the other half of the fuselage.
And for added strength, if you want, you can always take some thick CA, and I'll show you in a second, and excuse me, create a bead along the edge here where the former meets the fuselage. So that way you can ensure that you've got a good, strong bond. And what I mean by that is we've got some either extra thick or medium will work just fine. Take some CA, run it along here like so. And you can do it on both sides or one side, doesn't matter. And then use some good old Insta-Set. And there you go. I will say I've tried a number of different CAs over the years, and consistently the best one is Bob Smith Industries. You can look them up online. They're very popular. You can find them in hobby shops, on Amazon, pretty much everywhere just about. Not sure why theirs is so great, but it is. All right, that takes care of former F3. Let's go to F2. Once again, we're looking to make sure it lines up with the lines that we drew previously. Which it does. And we're going to hold that against the side like so. We're going to make sure we're at 90 with this one, very important. And we are. So all we need is just a little bit of thin CA. All right, once again, we're going to use our little trick that we did a second ago, where we took our extra thick and made a little fillet, if you will, along the edge where it meets the other fuselage half. Just like that. And our Insta-Set once again. And there we go. And that's it. Look for any gaps that you may have. Maybe perhaps the former might have a bit of a gap in certain areas. Fill those in with your thick CA. You want a good, strong bond. Especially on formers that are being used to support parts of the plane, such as the landing gear or the wing. For example, former F3 right here, that the wing it'll have two dowels that the wing will slide in, that the wing will slide into. It has two holes that has dowels that will slide into this former, and you want to make sure you got a good bond there as well. All right, we've got one more. We've got our F1, which is up here. Last one. This one's going to hold the nose gear. Once again, we're going to check for our 90 degrees. Yep, that's perfect, just like that. We need to make sure we've got a good flush fit on the bottom. Very important. Bottom and top. Well, bottom primarily, actually. Yep, all right, very good. All right, with that in place, like so. Good old thin CA. One more time. Now, normally I would put a mask on whenever I'm using CA because you don't want to breathe this stuff in. Some people can develop an allergic reaction with repeat exposure. But because I'm actually talking to you now, it'd be very difficult for you to hear me while I'm gluing this in place. All right, that's glued. Looking perfect. Let's go ahead and once again take our thick CA. Actually, you know what? We're not, with this one, we are going to go ahead and do a little thick CA right here. Yep. And our Instaset. There we go. And that's it. There's our fuselage right there. So we just have to put our top sheeting in place and we're moving right along. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, what we're looking at is the rear of the fuselage, and this is the this is F4, which is where we would mount the motor to. Now, that plywood block you see there at the bottom is supposed to be the wing bolt block. Now, there's a problem. You can see how when I drilled the holes for the motor, I drilled it, just in a plus fashion. No big deal. But actually, it is a big deal. You'll see the blind nut there is sitting, well, it's in the way of the wing bolt plate. And let me see if I can turn it this way. You'll notice how it basically is blocked, the hole, this particular wing bolt plate. So, quick tip to pass along to you. Make sure that when you drill the holes for the motor, that you drill them in an X fashion. Okay, I'll have to re-drill these holes. So, anyway, just wanted to pass that along. More to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, we are mounting the wing, as you can see here. And what we're doing is we're using this drill block here by Millscraft. And one of the nice things about this drill block, it allows you to drill the holes nice and straight, perpendicular to the surface of the wing. One of the neat things about it is if you look right here, you have these notches, and they line up with the lines that I've drawn in order to center the holes, as you can see there and right there. So you get a perfect drill every time. And you've got these wonderful metal inserts here that allow you to put the drill bit in and be able to drill straight and true. So that's what we're doing right now. And you can tell we've also got the wing dowels in place. If you look right down in there, you can see one there, and there's one over there as well. So we're getting near the end, and more to come. All right, friends, starting with step 16, here's what you need to do when it comes to mounting the whole, or the wing to the fuselage. You can see it there. Feel free to hit pause on your screen if you need these instructions. Perhaps you're building this plane, because the plans are readily available online. If you just Google them, Canard Stick, you'll find the plans on the internet. And here's the rest of the instructions here. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update, you can see we've got the landing gear in place. I purchased these landing gear from a local hobby shop down in Florida while on vacation. They are from Great Plains. Here is the stock number for the landing gear, in case you're interested in purchasing it. I don't know if they're still made, but you can see it right there, beginning with GPMA. Also, this is the stock landing gear that it came with. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's a very sturdy wire. I just wanted something a little more sturdy than the wire itself. And I'd seen two other folks that built this plane I use this same style of landing gear. Very nice, comes pre-painted, even a bit of an airfoil to it. It's the perfect width in terms of the stance and in terms of the width of the fuselage. Let me show you real quick. You can see it is an excellent match as far as the width. We're using 6/32 socket heads to hold the landing gear in place. One recommendation I would have is to go ahead and put your blind nuts in first, and then go ahead and put your triangular stock in. You can see here we went ahead and we actually did that afterwards. Not quite enough space between the bolts themselves and the triangular stock for me to put a blind nut in at this time. But that's okay. We'll go ahead. We'll just use a lock nut to hold that in place, and that should be sufficient. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update, we are going to now be mounting the servos for the elevators, and let's talk about that for a moment. So normally what would happen, this is the area right in here where the servos would be mounted, and you can see that represented here on the plans as indicated right there. You can see are the servos, but we can't put the servos here because the battery is going to go here. So initially I thought about putting the servos here, but the issue was, you can see if we had to cut this amount of balsa away, it would not have left enough to really hold the canard in place. Because remember now, the canard sits here, but you've got to consider, you know, is there enough surface there to hold the canard in place without it coming off in flight? And if I were to cut that section away, the answer would be no. But then I had an epiphany. Rather than going through and just cutting it out and mounting the servo this way, I realized that if I were to take a servo cutout like this and glue it here, that then helps to reinforce this area that was the area that's going to be cut away, so you don't lose any surface area that might impact the ability of the canard to be held in place. So I had this. This was just from a die cut set that Great Plains used to sell with all these different die cut wood pieces, and one of them was like a servo mount tray. So we have this piece here, and what we also have, I happen to have this right angle servo holder, as you can see, but then what I did, I just simply chopped the top. So now what I'll do is I'll take it, move some of the light out of the way there, I'll take it and I'll wind up gluing it here like so on the side, on the front. Remember, this is the front of the fuselage, on the side, and then our servo will just get dropped right in there like that, you see? And of course we'll cut out the hole and everything on the fuselage. This should work. As I showed you before on the Rutan Defiant, they have it set up that way, so I think this should be fine. That way we free up the area in here for the battery. The only servo we have to worry about is the servo for steering. So I need to take a moment to think about that. For right now, though, I'm going to go ahead and focus on getting the servos installed for the elevator. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue update, I thought I would take a moment just to provide a more detailed description of how we exactly cut the slot here for the servo. For anyone that might be going through and maybe building this kit or something similar to it, or any aircraft where they might want to go ahead and do a direct drive servo. So you can see here we've got our slot that I cut out for the servo itself. Now the way I determined the placement is, first of all, we took our laser cut, plywood servo mount, and I took it and I put it on the surface such that the edge right here would be up against the part of the fuselage where the canard is going to be glued to. Now, I wanted to keep in mind that when I made the cut, I didn't want to cut in here into F1, which is where the nose gear is going to be mounted. But I did want to make sure that I was able to go ahead and still have this in place to help reinforce this section here because of any loss of rigidity that may occur because of this large cutout. So with that, we have our laser cut part here, and I just went ahead and traced it and cut it out. And it's a perfect fit, as you can see. Let me drop the servo in. Get that down a little bit. There we go. There you go. And of course, we'll have our die cut piece glued on the fuselage before I insert the servo. So, and then once I was able to determine the placement on the right side of the fuselage, what I did is I went ahead and just took some measurements. I measured from the front of the fuselage to the edge here, from the front of the fuselage to the edge here, and then from the bottom of the fuselage to here, and the bottom of the fuselage to the top portion here. And then I just took it and replicated it, as you can see right here, on the left side of the fuselage. So we're going to go ahead and cut that out, and then afterwards we'll take our die cut, or laser cut servo mounting plates and go ahead and CA them in place. You won't need to epoxy. CA will be more than enough to hold this in place, and then we'll mount our servo. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update, we have finished the cutouts for our elevator servo, and you can see right there, this is our die cut plywood piece. On the opposite side is the laser cut piece, but it's perfect. Works great. One thing I want to recommend to you, if you are building this kit and you do use the same technique for mounting the servos, make sure you put CA not only on the outside, but go ahead on the inside edges here, if you will, okay? So that way you're reinforcing this, making sure this is in place, and you're reinforcing the surrounding wood that this mount is attached to. That way you're ensuring that the integrity, and you don't have to worry about the canard being ripped off in flight due to decreased rigidity from the opening that's been made here. All right, friends, we're done with that piece. Now it's time for us to go ahead and start thinking about where we're going to put the steering servo, and while still being able to go ahead and keep this space open for the batteries. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, we're looking at the fuselage. Let's talk battery trays. So as I mentioned previously, this is the area where the battery is going to sit. Normally the servos would sit here, but we've moved the servos all around. The only one that we can't move is the steering servo. It would be great if we could put it in this area, but keep in mind the canard is going to sit here, so we wouldn't be able to get access to it because the canard is going to be glued in permanently. And it would be great if we could put it back here. However, this area is going to be completely sealed up as well, top and bottom. So the only place we can really put it and still give room for the battery is going to be right where we see it. So rather than going through and writing and putting it in a normal fashion, like what you see here on the plans, in terms of how it's mounted, we're going to turn it so it's facing this way. So what we need to do is to go ahead and get a couple pieces of very thick wood here and here so we can mount the servo. And as far as our tray is concerned, what we're going to do is we're going to put 3 pieces of 1/4-inch spruce, one that runs here, one that runs here, and one that runs here. And we're going to get it so it's nice and flush with the bottom. And then we're going to wind up epoxying the tray to those 3 cross braces. And that should take care of our situation with regards to the battery tray. So anyway, that's where we are at the moment. What we need to do is to put the cross braces on first, and then go ahead and then mount the tray and then the servo. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here on the St. Croix Models Canard Stick fuselage, let's talk about what I've done so far. So you can see we've got our cross braces down in there for our battery tray. And let me show you what I'm talking about and how it's going to sit. We're going to drop that right in there, and that's exactly how it's going to look, and we're going to epoxy that in place. And you can see we've got a gap on each side, just enough for us to fit the straps in so we can lock down our battery. And so we have that in place. You can also see that we've gone ahead and we've started putting we've completed putting on our bottom sheeting. Let me pull back a little bit so you can see that. And you'll notice how when you put on the bottom sheeting, if you look back here, it butts up against the landing gear mount. So we've got that in place. We even got our hole drilled up front for our nose gear. We've gone ahead, we've started putting on our sheeting, but before we did that, we had to create a hatch, and it does come with the plywood here. And you can see what I did is did a little tongue and groove, as you can see right there. And what that does is you take the cross piece that's here, and you're going to take your tray, and you're just going to slide it right on the front. Whoop, take the tray and slide it right on the front just like that. There you go. And then you got a little one individual screw on here. Now the instructions call for 8 screws. I'm going, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, I'm trying to take a battery out. Between having the tongue and groove and the single screw back here, that's more than enough. You could even add a magnet if you wanted to. If you wanted to magnetize the hatch, which would work really well. I just decided just to keep it real simple and just do one single screw. So that's more than enough to keep that in place and make the battery readily accessible. We've gone ahead, we started adding our top sheeting. Now, the thing to keep in mind when you're adding your top sheeting, you want to make sure your hatch is in place, okay? And you're gonna get it so it butts right up against it. I left a little bit of space here, so when I cover this with the Ultra Coat, I can wrap it around the edge of the hatch here. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna finish sheeting all the way back here to F4, okay? And then we're done with the top sheeting. So things are moving along really well. Very happy with the progress. More to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, we have our top sheeting in place. And you can see it there. It came out really well. We got to do a little bit of sanding, of course, just to smooth it out and get the edges rounded a little bit. What we're working on now is we're working on our nose cone, if you will. You can see our 2 pieces here. What we did is we took the pattern that's shown here, went ahead and glued it to the 1/4 inch balsa, and just took a sander and sanded it into shape. And they look great. And let me show where we are in terms of steps. We're at doing 25 right now, just so you know. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna glue these to the front of the fuselage, and then we'll go ahead and we will sheet them so we can get a nice looking nose cone for the front of the plane. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, we've got our nose cone sides in place, and now we're going to go ahead and sheet it, and I have a very interesting technique for that, and I'll share that with you in a moment. More to come. All right, friends, so here is the technique that we're using to shape the nose cone. So normally you could take like a 1/8 inch piece of balsa, and like we did on the wing, we just went ahead, we put the balsa on top, used some alcohol and some water, and just kind of shape it down, and that works fine too. But I wanted to use a technique that I have used before in some of my giant scale planes, where you can see all we're doing is we're cutting 1/4 inch wide, 1/8 inch balsa. And we're just cutting it so that way it is just a little wider than the fuselage, so we can sand it down, get it nice and even. But what it does is that once it's finished, it provides a really nice, smooth shape to the actual surface. And not only can you use it on, well, for this example, for nose cone, but you can use it on larger scale aircraft. For example, let me come up here and I'll show you. So here's the Hostetler Cessna. And you can see when we look back in here, notice how nicely shaped it is. It's very round, very curved. And that's because I use that same technique. 1/4 inch strips all the way down the length of the fuselage. And that prevented it from having that very octagon shape that some aircraft can take when you're sheeting them. So what'll happen, once again, you'll put this on, you'll sand it here, but we're also going to sand here so it gets nice and smooth, and that's it. So it's really straightforward, very easy to do, and you just use a little CA to hold it in place. All right, we'll have the finished product in a second. More to come. All right, friends, our nose cone is done. Look how nice that came out. Really good. Probably the simplest, easiest nose cone I've ever done. So this is a great kit. I tell you, I can't say it enough. If you are fortunate enough to locate the plans online, which I know they are available free, if you just do a little search for it, build it. You won't be disappointed. Super easy to build, and just a great plane. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue update on the fuselage, you can see we have our battery tray glued in place. I used the 120-minute epoxy to hold it in place, and it went in great.
So we're going to go ahead now and start keeping our focus on the wing and just doing some final finishing touches. Let's show you where we are on the instructions. For those that are following along, you can see here's what we have left. Not a whole lot. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, just little bits and pieces that are left as we're finishing up the fuselage. I have a little balsa block filler that we put in here. I'll show you where it's located on the fuselage side. You can see it here. This little piece right here is what we're looking at. And to get the proper shape, I actually had an extra wing rib, as you can see right here. And I just went ahead and turned the wing rib upside down and took the block and I put this up against the side of the block, this part of the rib, and just drew a line here on the side. And then I had a paint can and some adhesive sandpaper that I attached to the side of the paint can because it gave that proper curvature, much like like you see here on the end of the wing rib itself, and that's how we got that proper curvature. So really straightforward. There's a 1/16 inch gap right here, by the way, folks, just so you know. Okay, so when you're putting it in. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, we're now focusing on the installation of the canard, and we can see the canard is here. Let me show you what we did. So you need to put a 3/16 inch piece of balsa on the top to act as filler, so it blends in with the fuselage on the top. And you'll need to sand it as well. Now, to give you a perspective of what it should look like, let's go over to the plans, and you can see the side view here. And we're looking at this piece right here, where it says 3/16 balsa filler, which is that piece right there, okay? That's what that's blending in with. Now, also, just so you know, if you're interested in where we are on the actual instructions, you can see here on number 28, that's what we're working on at this time to get that in place. Let's talk about what we have here. So first of all, you can see, when we look at it from the side, let me zoom in a little bit, and let me focus. There we go. Notice how the canard sits a little higher than the nose. Doesn't seem like much, but it does make a difference. And so in order to get this to blend in, what I decided to do was to go ahead, take a piece of 1/16 inch balsa, and you can see how we've added a little curve in there, just a little curve, and thinned it out on top. And then what will happen is we'll take this piece, like so. Let's get a little, and you can see how nicely it blends in with the nose. And we'll have to bend it a little bit in order to get it to fit. But anyway, you can see how it blends in really nicely with the nose and how it gives a much more finished look when we look at it from the side, okay? So we're gonna go ahead, we'll install the actual canard in just a little bit. But first we need to focus on the steering, and I'll have more on that in just a little bit. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, we continue our update here on the fuselage. Let's talk steering. So after putting a battery in the battery tray in the plane itself, I determined that even though the servo would sit right there, it would still be too close to the battery, and the servo arm would wind up hitting the battery, not giving enough steering to the nose gear. So the best option is to take the actual servo itself and put it on the bottom of the plane. So I've got a good old high-tech servo, standard. We're going to wind up putting that there as well. And we're just going to go ahead and mount the servo in the same exact fashion as we did the elevator servos here, and just drive it that way, and that should work fine. So we're going to make a cut with our outline, and we're going to reinforce it here and here with some 1/8 inch plywood. All right, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, let's take a look at steering. So I mentioned that we made a cutout, which we did, and used some 1/8 inch ply here for reinforcement and CA'd that in place. And you can see what we also did. We took a Dubro steering arm for a 5/32 nose gear, as you can see. And that went ahead and it's going to give us the perfect geometry. Now, what I also did on the inside, I still kept the other steering arm in place, as you can see. And the reason for that is you have to have spacing. If you look right in there, you have to have a proper spacing between the two brackets for the nose gear. So the simplest thing to do is just keep that in place. Now what we'll do is we need to trim this a little bit. It's a little too tall, and obviously this is also very tall right here as well, as you can see. So we'll shorten that up. But what I am going to do, rather than bending this like you see here on another nose gear I have, what I am going to do is Dubro sells these easy adjustable axle, and you can see the pieces right here, and you can see how it's put together. It'll make more sense once we put it together. So what we're going to do now is we have the steering in place, so I think we're going to go ahead and mount the canard, get that taken care of, so that'll all be in place, and then we can go ahead and begin the process of covering. So we are definitely nearing the end. All right, friends, more to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update here, you can see our canard is glued in place. Came out really well. We're going to take our finishing piece and put that here and get that done. And then for the most part, the fuselage is basically done. More to come. All right, friends, you can see the finishing piece is in place. Looks great. Gives it a nice look. And basically we're done with the fuselage, except for rounding off the corners a little bit here on the piece here on both sides, and of course the finishing piece. Basically that's it. So the fuselage is done. I'll have a video again once the plane is covered. But thank you for watching, and please subscribe.